Agenda with one minor change. I'm going to move 11A up to 5C, and I need a motion. Councillor Nixon, Councillor English. All those in favor? Motion's carried. I need a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of March 27th. Councillor English, Councillor Orlando. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Is there any business arising from those minutes of March 27th? So we're going to move right into item 5A, which is development services development permit for 311 Campbell Avenue. And there was one item of correspondence that was added to that. We're going to have a presentation. Mr. Whitehood?
Just a short one, Your Worship.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application was approved in principle by Council at the March 27th meeting. The proposal of the development permit with a number of embedded variances, which if approved will permit the construction of a two dwelling unit structure at the front of the property, which contains the Cube Hotel. There's the diagram that's viewed from Campbell Avenue. The design will match the existing theme of the Cube Hotel. The proposal includes 4 variances, which are supported by staff. These include reducing the minimum dwelling unit size from 70 square meters to 32 square meters, to locate a dwelling unit on the ground floor in a C1 zone, to reduce the minimum parking requirements from 1.5 stall per unit to 0, to reduce the minimum usable open space for a dwelling unit from 5 square meters to 4.5 square meters. Approval of the variances is subject to the owner entering into a covenant ensuring a minimum of 30-day rentals for these units. Staff are supportive of this to help encourage the provision of affordable staff housing units in the downtown. Staff have received 3 public comments, mostly concerned with the parking variance. Just to clarify, we get the site plan. The original Cube development had a requirement for 5 parking stalls here along the side of the building. Before the building was renovated, they were 5 stalls out front, which are now with landscaping. So as far as zoning bylaw provisions were when this was constructed, as there's no addition to floor space, there is no requirement for additional parking stalls. Staff remains supportive of the parking variance. We are considering this on a site-by-site and project-by-project basis, and we feel that this is encouraging long-term support for staff housing. And given the nature of the employment form, staff feels that it would be unlikely to increase parking demand substantially, if at all. For example, if this is for staff housing and you have an employee coming to clean the rooms and they happen to live here, well, that's one less parking stall being used with someone driving to the Cube and using it. So it is likely to be negligible, if at all, an impact. Approval of the resolution today would allow for issuance of the development permit, subject to receipt of the restrictive covenant, subject to receipt of a subdivision application to sort out the lot lines on the site, and subject to receipt of financial security for landscaping.
Councillor Duke.
I can bring forward 5A. The development permit DP 2017-14 be approved for issuance subject to completion of the condition approved on March 27, 2018.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Nixon.
Just a question for staff, Your Worship. You mentioned that there were 3 comments received from the public. We have 1 in our package, and the other 2 came by letter or email.
Yes, they were emailed in the binder.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? We did talk about this at our last committee of the whole meeting, and I think that I would actually like to commend the Cube Hotel for coming up with one of many solutions that could be used to accommodate staff housing. We put a restricted covenant, Mr. Whitehead, that this can't be used for daily rental. And I think that I want to congratulate him, and I think that this is something that a lot of businesses are going to have to start looking at if they're going to keep and maintain staff in a difficult market. So I am all in favor of this moving forward. Councillor Brothers.
I've raised some issues about parking and my concerns about parking, but I think Mr. Whitehead has provided some measure of comfort to me in that regard. And as well, I just think when you have to balance the need for employee housing versus the parking and the minimal amount of parking it does impact upon, I think this is a good thing to move forward. So I'm going to approve this as well.
Any other comments or questions from council? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Whitehead. We are on to 5B, which is a development variance permit for 707 Fifth Street East. Is there a presentation for this? Yes, Councillor.
Your Worship, before we get started, just a sort of a point of order question from myself. After we've seen this at council one time, and then the next day I received a notice from the city, like they delivered it to my door, saying that I'm within the 100-meter zone. It's probably about exactly 100 meters away. Does that mean it would be advisable for me to recuse myself or not? Quite a ways away from it. I was actually surprised to get it because it's like 100 meters away.
I don't really think this one is problematic, Your Worship. It's a variance to build a dwelling unit at the rear. No, this is the
Changes the roof line, yeah. Setback.
I think it's inconsequential.
Okay, for sure. Thank you.
Mr. Whitehead.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is back in front of council for final issuance for a variance to the front yard setback at 707 Fifth Street East from 6 meters to 4.8 meters. Here's a picture of the proposal. This will legalize the current location of the front wall of the building and will allow the applicant to reconstruct the roof, which will permit for a further 1 meter overhang and the potential to build a deck up to 2 meters into the very front yard setback. No comments were received from public.
Councillor Duke.
I can bring forward 5B. The development variance permit DBP 2017-15 be approved for issuance.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Sauls. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried. We are going to, thank you, we are going to go to 11A, which is a development permit for installation of exterior LED lighting. And yes.
Point of order, I happen to live next door, and I just want to make sure that nobody has any difficulty with me living next door. I understand that there's no lighting that will be affecting where I live in my particular building, so my view is I don't have a conflict at all, and I'm prepared to stay unless somebody thinks that otherwise. Mr. Chabot, what do you think?
You're the one that has to declare the conflict.
I know I have to declare the conflict. But
I have noted on the agenda a conflict due to business relationship with credit union.
My view is I don't have a problem, so I'll stay.
Nominated need to come up here and give a presentation on the denial report.
How do you feel about that?
Bear with me. So we have 2 development permit applications. Stream here for some LED strip lighting in 2 locations downtown. And a quick summary of what I'm going over here for. So largely, these 2 applications are contrary to our OCB dark sky policy. We'll go over that in a minute. From a design point of view, we have concerns with the negative visual impact that we perceive will come from these 2 locations, and the fact that this lighting is unnecessary. We have a prescriptive guidelines in our OCP to address these on a case-by-case basis. We're unable to specify certain characteristics of what lighting should be, aside from the fact that they're not dark sky friendly. And at this time, we're recommending that they're denied, and that you consider, council consider, and the community consider dark sky policies during our upcoming OCP review process, and then we'd be better positioned to deal with situations like this in the future. The two locations are both of the credit union locations, the corner of 2nd and Connaught, and on Campbell and Victoria. The first location here, the proposal is to put a perimeter of strip lighting along the bottom here, on both sides, along the top. And then there was some colorful, there was on some festive lighting that would have the ability to change color depending on the season, like this is all place on a particular day. This is the back side. Again, some colorful lighting up here along with some of the strip lighting along the top. And this orange one in the back was not meant to be orange, it was just meant to be bright. There was some concern about the safety back here. The second location is on Victoria and Campbell. Again, 2 rows of LED lighting and some festive lighting up at the top there. So we'll go over some of the reasons why we have some concerns with this. The first is our OCP. I included this in the report. Dark sky policies are intended to reduce visual impacts, and the policies surrounding that are to reduce lighting to retain the quality of the dark sky and encourage developments to use directional lighting, so that would be down lighting that minimizes unneeded lights. This is where we turn to for interpretation of guidelines and policies in the absence of clear-cut direction. So we have our development permit guidelines, which dictate the form and character of buildings. Where those specify something regarding lighting and it does not have some clarity, then we turn to these policies right here. There's various different arguments for why something should be installed or why it shouldn't be installed. One of the arguments in this case might be that it's good for the community. The OCP itself is intended to be a reflection of the community values because it was adopted based upon consultation with the community. So we refute the argument based on that. The next layer of policy is the design guidelines. This is what we use to control form and character throughout the city, and that's how we would address the visual impact, by requiring a development permit and then going through a design process. So this can affect the visual impact of the building through design, through shielding of lights, through how it integrates with other buildings, how glare might be perceived from neighboring properties. Why dark skies? I'll go over this pretty quickly. I'm not a scientist, but some of the environmental impacts are related to bird and bat migrations. It's not just about the birds and the bats, it's about the overall ecosystems that surround those. There's some scientific evidence that says that bright lights shining up in the sky will have negative impacts. Energy, I'm going to back up here and say largely when you see dark sky policies and regulatory documents, they're referencing this association right here. So they're an advocacy group based out of the States and also a research and information source. That's where I've gotten this information from. Energy, unnecessary energy used and cost. Health is due to visual discomfort from some. There's some science behind that. Unnecessary light has been shown to disrupt sleep cycles. And then the visual impact is glare. The definition of glare is light that shines straight in your eyes. So what is dark sky friendly? A little visual interpretation right there. So some of the streetlights we have do look like this. Some of the newer installations look more like this. So the intent behind dark sky is that it not shine up, but it shine down and directionally. In the report, I had some technical language around color temperature. I just wanted to give a visual representation of what that means. So warmer is down here, cooler is down here. The science surrounding health is that blue lights have negative health effects. You've all seen this on your phones, a thing called night shift. So if you lie in bed and look at your phone, you're supposed to turn this on because the blue light will keep you awake at night. Lights outside at night can have a similar impact, and that's with human health and again with migration patterns. As far as safety goes, there are arguments for the bluer lights. This is an example of the old style street lights. This is the new style. Blue light travels farther and it appears brighter. So when you have a street light scenario like this, it's easier for drivers to see. It's easier for drivers to see pedestrians. But of course, this is when the lights are directional and shielded. I just want to sort of illustrate the spectrum of possibilities for outside lighting. I'm not putting any of these up here to suggest one would be good or bad. I think that's a conversation for later. But that's the Parliament buildings, that's in Vancouver. That's another option of what you could do. Again, I think it's safe to say we're not looking for this. That's Three Valley Gap, and that's a good example of glare coming off the building and shining right in your eyes. So we have examples in Revelstoke of what may be considered not dark sky friendly. They've been here for a long time. This is where having specific guidelines in place would help us to establish criteria over what could be supported, what couldn't, and in what situations. Moving on, let's see. So we have 2 development permits that were issued. These were done at the staff level, one in 2015, one in 2016. We struggle with the fact that these were issued contrary to policies and don't see the reason to carry on with that. So that's why we're here today, is because at the staff level, we've decided that we're not supportive of the strip lighting moving forward. So we're putting it forward to council to consider. I just want to relate this to the color temperature. The Regent uses around the 3,000 mark, and that's what is being proposed currently for these 2 DPs. The Best Western site uses a much cooler temperature, so the result is that you can see it from much farther away. And this is generally more to be understood as the more negative type. In terms of color temperatures, yeah, that's 5,500 Kelvin. The Regent is 3,000. Our design concerns here, glare into neighboring properties. The strip lights point outwards, and partially upwards and downwards. So if you're in a neighboring window, you'll be able to see it. If you're on the other side of Victoria Road, you'll be able to see it. I don't mean to pick on the Best Western, but you can see that from any sight line anywhere within the city. We're concerned with conflicting light temperature. If we get a lot of these installations throughout the city and they have one bluish, one's yellowish, it's not going to look very good if we get them on buildings side by side. The fact of the matter here is that it is unnecessary. There are arguments to be made that it can be installed tastefully, and I think we do have examples of that, but again, without guidelines. LED lights are not going to improve safety. That's what street lights are for. And we have them downtown. And we have concerns with how we're going to apply strip lights to be consistent with our heritage buildings downtown. And there's nothing saying we might not get a proposal from someone to install them on a heritage building. It would be hard to deal with that. As far as safety, these buildings do have downlights, uplights up here. There's a street light in front. We've got downlights right here, and we're happy to work with the applicants to install more downlighting to improve safety if there is a concern. Moving forward, past approvals and the existing lights, we don't believe that they warrant further approvals until we have a framework in place to support these. Same can be said for some of our existing streetlights that provide glare out, and long-term plans to replace those with downlighting. Right now, we're recommending that these be denied. Based on the concern of a proliferation of applications for strip lighting, if it becomes a popular thing, we really want to avoid case-by-case evaluations on the basis that we don't have prescriptive guidelines. During our OCP review coming up this year and next, we can consult with the community on how they feel about lighting installations, whether they want to see this, and then we can develop exterior lighting guidelines with their input. And moving forward, we can consider some installations throughout town. So it's not that we're saying that these are off the table forever. We're saying to deny these applications right now. If the applicant chooses to come back later on, we can go through based on new guidelines that we might have in place. And I'll leave it at that.
Yes, Councillor Brothers.
I have 2 questions.
We need a motion for it.
I was actually going to give the applicant the opportunity to, but if you have a question.
Two questions, yeah.
All right.
Just to clarify some things. Your report was great, and I really appreciate it. I learned a lot by this, and it was really informative, especially in determining long-term policy and that type of thing. The only thing I did notice is this International Dark Skies says that they think that outdoor lighting should be less than 3,000 K, and as I understand it, the proponent is that's what the proponent is suggesting? Is there some reason why, I mean, this is International Dark Sky Policy, which you're referring to. Is there some reason why you say, well, no, I don't want to go along with that?
To go along with their suggestion to use 3,000?
Or less, yeah.
So it's not so much that, it's the issue of having them installed without any guidelines as to where, how, and the unshielding. So they're saying that all light should be 3,000 or less, and they're saying that it should be shielded so it only shines down. Whereas in the case of these lights, they're put on the side of the building and they shine upwards and upwards.
Okay. And just my second question, can we add something that says that you know, the lights can only be on for a certain period of time and they have to be shut down between, let's say, midnight and 6 or something like that? Is that something that the city can do?
We could, it's just it's an enforcement issue.
Okay.
And that's not to say that they wouldn't turn it off. I'm sure they would if we made that stipulation, but generally we don't like to put something on a title of a property that we're really realistically going to have a challenge with.
Okay, thank you.
So because the staff are recommending that this be denied, we have an opportunity for the applicant to address council. And I guess, Councillor Nixon, you know, council may not put a motion on the floor to deny. That's the staff recommendation. Council could make a motion to approve it. So that's the distinction, because the staff are recommending denial is the reason why we're letting the applicant. Did you wish to speak to council? I do. Okay, so we have Roberta Bobicki here. She's the CAO for the credit union. And you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you. Can I just stay where I am? That would be nice.
I think the podium would be better because it's the microphone is there. That's for the streaming.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'm glad to finally be here and have this issue addressed. I'd like to start by speaking about a meeting that Mr. Sturgeon and myself had with the professional lighting company, Accent Lighting, and tell you about some of the concessions we already made during that conversation. These lights they've never ever been intended to point upwards. Accent Lighting was quite clear to point out they're a long metal strip, of which I gave 3 samples to the planning department to show how they're built and how bright they are. And they can be pointed towards, they can go straight down or they can go like that. We agreed to that. There's a real exception to how bright the Best Western lights are. That isn't even in the realm of what we're looking to do. We're proposing less than a third the lumen on our building than the Best Western is projecting. 3,000 was what our plan was set for, and we also agreed during that conversation with Mr. Sturgeon to even drop that further than 3,000. We further agreed that down the alley between the credit union and Councillor Brothers' property, we would not put any lights there, and we wouldn't put any along the whole top at the back of the credit union where the Explorer Society Hotel might be impacted. In 2005, Revelstoke Credit Union did a $3 million renovation to that building. And I think it was done tastefully, and I think we've always had what's best for Revelstoke in the back of our mind. We're not intending to do anything tacky or distasteful. The dark skies thinking, I've lived here a long time, and I know that became a concern. There was a picture up there of the bear with the spotlight. That's what started that concern. I don't think what we're proposing on the credit union relates to that in any regard. And lumen is less, lights are pointing down. We're a resort community. How can we turn the lights off? Why do we want to do this at the credit union? Because in the winter, by 4 o'clock, it's pitch black. And we thought some soft, friendly lighting around the top of our building would be something nice for those long winter hours. Our full intent, as Mr. Sturgeon knows, is to have these on a timer. We wouldn't have them on after midnight. We don't have the colors flashing. If it's Christmas, it might be red. It might move to green. It's not going to be Vegas at all. And we're a financial institution, so in that decline, it says it's not a safety issue. At the back of our building, where we come out the back door, it is a safety issue. I don't have enough light there, so I have to do something. Anyway, I just hope you'll give it careful consideration. This is intended to be Revelstoke Credit Union's way to continue to improve Revelstoke. You know how much we contribute to everything in the community, and I would not ever be asking council to do something that was going to be to the detriment to Revelstoke. Thank you.
Is anybody prepared to put a motion on the floor? Councillor Duke.
Well, I was going to bring forward the staff motion here.
Do whatever you want.
The application DP 2018-03 and DP 2018-04 be denied.
The motion to deny both the applications. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Brothers.
I think, having read the report, Mr. Sturgeon's report, I really think that long-term we need to have a policy. I think it's really unfair to the community and it's unfair to staff that we do everything on an ad hoc, one-on-one basis. And we definitely need a policy to understand what we want to look like as a city. Having said that, however, though, I think this is one that we should just go forward with. I think having heard the proponent and looked at everything, it is tasteful. It isn't offending dark skies because the International Dark Skies says 3,000 and less. The proponent has said it's going to be less than 3,000 Kelvin. So my view is we should let these go through. And so I'm not going to support what staff has said, and I'll leave it at that.
Councillor English.
I'm not prepared to support the motion as presented by staff. Similar comments to Councillor Brothers. I think that this is something that the RCU wants to do to improve our community and improve their building, and I'm prepared to support that, so I will be voting against the motion.
Councillor Sells.
Your Worship, about 25 years ago, almost every one of us as merchants in the downtown core had put LED light strips on our building, including mine, which is a heritage building. And had it not been for an exuberant painter in the last few years, I would still have that strip lighting on my building and active. I still have the timer and everything there. I thought it looked very tasteful. It drew something to the downtown core. I am going to echo what my co-counsel have done as far as not supporting the motion as presented. I think this is something that would add to the community and add to this building. It's not a heritage building, and the credit union is going out of their way to do something that's going to work. I do understand about policy, that sort of thing, but I think in this situation we can go forward and allow this to happen.
I'm hoping it wasn't 25 years ago. Was it really 25 years ago? Because I was trying to remember how, because I had done a couple of buildings up back then. There was a big push on by the Chamber of Commerce to light up the community and make it more friendly and safe and secure, and to enhance the buildings downtown. And I agree with you. I think it looked really good. I think it was before the days of LEDs, because what happened was some of the lights burnt out, and then it didn't look as good, and that's I think one of the advantages to the LEDs. But listening to Ms. Bobicki and listening to the staff report, and then reading in here, and I think that the staff are saying that if council sees merit in the current proposal, staff can be directed to work with the applicants to reduce the impact of the lighting, including the following measures: reducing the amount of lights, using shielding, increasing the intensity of light, specifying warmer color temperatures, avoiding glare to adjacent buildings, ensuring that light sources point downwards. And I listened to what Roberta was saying, and it seems to me that she's made just about all of these concessions already, and I think that what we have here is and I don't think I have to explain to everybody around this table that I have always been pushing and supportive of getting more lights into the community. And you could argue that lights may or may not make the community safer, but they make people feel safer. They make people feel that they're more welcome, and it makes it look like it's a destination where people want to be going to. And so I've always been a proponent of it, and I think it's something that we should be looking at. I do appreciate staff's cautions in some areas, and I think that they're right. And we do need a policy here, but unfortunately, it's taken us a year to get to this date, and I don't think that that's fair. So I'm not going to support the motion. I'm actually going to support, if a motion comes forward, that we move forward with some of these items that the staff have put in to ensure that this is going to be dark sky friendly, neighbor friendly, and yet become a more inviting to our visitors and locals, and I think that it's going to look good. So I'm looking for any other comments, Councillor Nixon.
Your Worship, Ms. Bobicki explains, the concessions that have been made. Just reminding council that also in our packages is the report from the Advisory Planning Commission. These are volunteers that serve the city, and they do not agree with these permits going forward. And the other committees that have not been asked for their feedback on it are the Environment Committee and the Heritage Committee. And I think if we do approve this today, this has to be direction to staff that if this one goes ahead, no further ones go ahead with this LED lighting until we go to the OCP review and ask the community, because there's another factor to Revelstoke. We sit right on the boundaries of two national parks, and if this was in national parks, this wouldn't be going ahead. And I think there's a respect for what the national parks brings to the community and respecting wildlife. And I just think that if it does go ahead today, we should hold any others in abeyance until after that OCP review is done.
Well, I'm not going to say I agree or disagree, but what you're really saying is that you're making a decision that council should be making about not taking any other applications, and I think that's a whole other council decision. Mm-hmm. So, and you're more than welcome to put that on the table. Council will, the next application will be coming to this table, and council is going to have to make a decision again.
Well, I'm hoping it won't take as long.
Councillor Duke.
Yeah, thanks to the staff for putting together the report. I think that, interestingly enough, so I had someone come through this past week, and I drove them around Revelstoke, and it surprised me how much development's going on. I know we talked about around the table how much is going on, how much is going through the planning department. There's a lot of stuff being built right now. And one of the comments they had to me was, so you just build whatever you want, there's no rules here, this is just kind of chaos, right? And I said, yeah, there's no real design structure for this community. We really don't have a vision of what we want our community to look like, and because of that, we have things that come to this table, such as this, where we have nothing guiding us, and we just kind of make an ad hoc decision. So that's what we're doing here today, is making an ad hoc decision, because we don't have policies and procedures in place. Our OCP, what we do have, the official community plan, it says that we don't want to pollute the skies with extra light, and we are now deciding as a council to not adhere to that. And I get that. That's part of our decision as a council, and we have the authority to do that. But I don't support this. I support the staff in this one, because yeah, sure, maybe we want a tourism town where lights are flashing everywhere, and the more lights we get, the more it's going to attract, and people can see it from space in a way they're going to come. But I don't think that, I personally don't think, I know the other councillors around the table feel differently, that we need more lighting, but what differentiates us, right? The fact that we are a little bit darker at night and we do have the national park, I think would make this place kind of cool. So everyone's got their different opinion on it, and until we get a policy in place that actually the community says, no, we want a dark sky, or no, we want to light this baby up, then we're just making a decision around this table how we feel. So I think the staff's report said, hey, let's just hold this one. And I know they've been waiting for a year. People, and I understand the credit union's a huge supporter of the community, and a lot of stuff doesn't happen without them, so I'm not speaking to that, I'm just speaking to the lighting issue. That we just wait until we actually have a policy in place for lighting in the downtown around the building. So I'm in support of the motion as it stands.
Any more discussion on the motion? The motion is to deny both applications. All those in favor? Against? Motion is defeated. Is anybody prepared to put a motion on the floor? Councillor Sills.
Your Worship, I'll put forward that applications DP 2018-3 and DP 2018-04 be accepted, and that we're allowed to let this go forward with some of the concessions that the credit union has already brought forward.
Did you get that, Cindy? Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Brothers.
Can I just clarify the concession that it will also include, I think Ms. Bobicki indicated she's not going to keep the lights on all night, and that she's prepared to turn them off, so that would be part of it as well?
Yeah, okay. Councillor English.
I just want to make sure in the clarification process that the lights are aimed down. Is that?
They're on an angle.
They're not pointing into the sky. Thank you.
I'm assuming that there would be some meetings between staff and the applicant to finalize these items that we're talking about.
Yeah, Your Worship, that was the clarity to the motion made by Councillor Salz that I wanted to see, because you noted it earlier in the report, staff said that they could be directed to work with the applicant to reduce the impact of the lighting, including the downward measures. And there's no development permit included for either of these applications with this report on this agenda, capable of being approved.
So the development
direction
permit
would be that the staff, if it's okay with the moving and seconding, would work with the credit union to bring forward an application that captures the thoughts that were discussed here. Reduced color temperature, downward lighting, hours of operation, sequencing, color changes.
Rory, you have a question?
I submitted 2 development variance permit applications last March, and I paid $600. My whole package, including everything from accent lighting, you've not seen any of it, including all of the research from that lighting company.
I think what the point we're trying to make is that, and that's fine, you know, it's probably gone up to $2,000, but we won't talk about that right now. I'm just kidding. Staff are going to be meeting, going through the development permit application, bringing some of the items that you have talked about and putting them in the application, and it'll come back to this table for approval.
Okay. But putting them in a permit, Your Worship, because it's a permit that describes the conditions of the installation and their use. But we don't have that. No, it's not an application. There's no more application fees to be made. It's simply prepare the actual permit so that council can give those requests.
Okay. Cindy, you get all that? Everybody around the table is clear what we're talking about? Is there any comments on the motion? All those in favor? Against? Motion is carried, and you get the votes against? Cindy? Councillor Nixon, Councillor Duke voted in favor of the first motion, voted against the second motion. So that's it for 11A.
I can move for 11A Part 2, which is not directly relevant to this.
Sorry, I didn't.
I'll move that dark sky policies be considered during the forthcoming OCP review and consultation process.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Councillor English.
Looking forward to having some policy to guide us.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carried. If you want to let our councillor back in. And we are on yes. Announcements are going to be really short. I just wanted to pass on the condolences from the community and council to the Humboldt Broncos that were involved in that tragic accident. Revelstoke, just like a lot of small town Canada, is passionate about hockey and passionate about their teams and their players. And it was a extremely tragic accident that really hits home to a lot of communities across Canada, and especially ones like us. And again, our thoughts and prayers are with all the families and friends of all those victims. Delegations, we have Mr. Weston from Fortis, BC.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Blair Weston with Fortis, BC. I'm here for my annual discussion about propane rates and what propane projects in Revelstoke. So thanks for having me. So where we are now, just a little history. We have been looking into the possibility of converting the propane system to a natural gas system. Last year, 2017, we decided not to pursue that any further, not to submit an application to the Utilities Commission. In short, because we decided it was too expensive, and also the price difference between propane and natural gas started to fall. So when we started looking at projects, they were high, and now not so much. And I just sort of wanted to show you, so we started to look at other things as well as some other projects. Here, that's propane, and really the numbers aren't as important for what we're looking right now as a variant. So if you look here, this is the propane, and this is natural gas. So you see with natural gas is pretty stable commodity over the last decade, while propane's been fluctuating up and down. And what we're trying to do now, what we're looking into is we're more concerned internally at Fortis about fluctuations than we are about the commodity price, let's say. Although right now propane's about pretty close to twice as expensive as natural gas. We recognize that, and we've come up with another idea we're looking into to help mitigate that. So right now, as we speak, we're not working on an LNG option for Revelstoke. I'd like to thank staff, by the way, for putting in a whole lot of time for us with that site process to get nowhere. Not to get nowhere, but like sitting on the shelf ready to go. We do. What we're looking into right now is the option of a Revelstoke roll and a commodity charges. So what that would mean is that the rate in Revelstoke would match the propane would match the rate for natural gas. We have people actively working on this right now. Right now our plan is actually to submit this. We're not doing this just so that I can come here and say we're doing this. We're actually looking hard into this. Again, I think I've talked to council before that we have done this in previous with natural gas rates. We used to have 3 different natural gas rates throughout the province. And we rolled in 3 years ago, I think, we rolled in Whistler and the island used to be on different rates, and we rolled those into the general rate. So we have some experience doing this. And again, it's a small impact to the bulk of FortisBC customers, but large benefit to the residents of Revelstoke, residents and businesses of Revelstoke. With the caveat on that, there's no guarantees what our outcome may be. But I think you know that obviously from the last 5 years dealing with us. But we will need to submit this application to the Utilities Commission, and they'll need to look at it and decide whether or not it's in the best benefit of their development. So what I'll say is we will, by the fall, we'll have a course forward, and should we decide to develop it, put an application again, we'll do some more not as intense consultation with the city as we did before, and residents of the city, so we'll do some consultation with the city, and then should we move forward, we'll submit to the our plan.
So are we the last propane system that Fortis runs, or do you have other systems like ours?
You are the last propane system that Fortis runs. There are others throughout the province, right? So you're the last. You're the only one we've ever had. Oh, yeah.
So special.
I mean, to Revelstoke and Fortis, it was a good thing. It was great. It was special. Like it was a great idea to do this. Because propane was a lot less expensive than it went down. It wasn't now.
But it's never been less than natural gas.
No, that's not correct. Sorry. There was a point where propane was lower than natural gas.
So it was like one day in the last 30 years, or
Maybe 3. but as you see over the last good long while, and forecasting outward, the forecast again is not that propane is going to be any time in the future be less than natural gas.
Councilor Brothers?
I just wanted to say that I know, Mr. Weston, that you're working really hard to find solutions on this for Revelstoke, and I just hope that great work is continuing and you can keep success in the next little while, because it's difficult. When we have a hard winter like we did this year, yeah, everybody notices the price difference, you know, so thanks.
Councilor Nixon?
Blair, when you say we are working on this and we agreed to do this, is this all the way up to the top executive team of Fortis, or is this the regional team?
No. I have had meetings with this with the Vice President of Regulatory and there's so yes, very much so. And when I say we, I am not doing any work on this, like personally, other than coming to talk with you. Our people in energy supply and our people in regulatory are working on it.
But all the way to the top of Fortis?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Again, I've had all the way to the top of that system.
Okay.
Councilor Lambert?
Would the roll-in, would this be a fixed rate, like at par with natural gas? I know there's commodity price, the delivery price, storage, all that kind of stuff. Would this roll-in be the equivalent of what others are paying in natural gas, or would there be some variance?
So our plan right now is it would be equivalent. That's what we've done everywhere else. And if you sort of see on these, well, actually you can't see because of the vertical axis is the same. But the only difference you're paying in Revelstoke is the commodity. You pay everything else the same as the rest of
And it goes by a gigajoule.
Yeah, so you're actually paying for some pieces of FortisBC, like all the rest of the pieces of FortisBC you're paying for, just like your postage stamp rate. The only difference is the price of propane versus natural gas. So our plan right now is to roll in its entirety the propane rate, so you'd be paying the exact same to the customers as the rest of us.
Councilor English?
Thank you for coming. I appreciate hearing from you. On the very last slide, it said there are no guarantees of outcome. I kind of feel like we're stuck for the population here. The last time I recall you coming, you'd mentioned we have an LNG project ready to go. It's sitting on the shelf. It doesn't make financial sense. The next comment we heard from Fortis was we're applying for an 18% increase to your propane rates. It was very frustrating to sit here and hear that. And I look at there are no guarantees as to what the outcome may be. I really, really hope that Fortis is trying to look for a solution in Revelstoke. It's incredibly expensive for the people who live here, especially as Councilor Brothers said. With the winter that we've just had, I would like to invite you back at your earliest convenience to update us again. I know that that's not my place to do that, but I'm sure I'll be here for you more frequently. So that we know what's going on. Thank you for your presentation.
But the thing is, that the reason why there's no guarantee is because it's a BC Utilities decision.
To be frank, yes, that's correct. There is some decision on our end whether we decide to pursue it or not, right? So we own some of it as well. I won't shirk that responsibility, but I think I've heard loud and clear, right? And that's good, both from where has the decision come from the top, and that the residents of Revelstoke are being impacted. We know this, and we're working on it. We are working all the way across. You're welcome.
Your Worship, thanks again for coming. My concern is we see the price of the propane going down to postage stamp rate. What about all the other incidental costs, the delivery costs, all those things? Are we going to see those go up to balance off this going down, or is it going to stay static?
You'll be rolled in. That's a hard question to answer because the plan right now is to roll you into the costs for all the residents of British Columbia, right? So for everybody on natural gas, the rate, I don't want to be confusing, but I want to answer your question right.
Yep.
So for everybody else in the province, the rate will go up a tiny bit, right? And for the residents of Revelstoke, everybody will go down. But that little bit that everybody else goes up, you're going to go up as well once you become a gas customer, right? So it's confusing, but your rate's going to go, but you'll be joined in with everybody else. At the end of the day, you'll be joined in with everybody else. The plan is to be joined in with everybody else. When there's a rate increase in Nelson or in Vancouver or in Prince George, there'll be a rate increase for Revelstoke. And if there's a rate decrease for those communities, there'll be a rate increase. You won't be isolated in any way at all.
Yeah. So if everybody's delivery across the province goes up 5 cents, we're going to go up 5 cents.
That's correct.
Yeah. But what's going to happen is the price of our commodity is going to get rolled to blend it in with everybody else's. So everybody else is going to go up 1 cent, and we're going to come down $1.
Yeah.
Or whatever the figure works out to.
And right now, your delivery is rolled into everybody else's.
Yeah.
Right?
Because if you look at the other slide, the delivery is pretty well flat line. It's a flat rate.
Yeah.
So, who else is in it? Somebody else in it?
I didn't do this for a second. Blair, thank you for the presentation. I understand. Where we're going to get the money from. So go for it.
Well, at the end of the day, if it all works out, this is going to be a better deal for the community and every consumer in town.
Yeah.
And I think that this was an option that was actually presented to you instead of doing the full meal deal LNG switchover. Why not look at this other option instead? Okay. Any other comments or questions for Blair? Okay.
Maybe one last point. I'd just like to thank, I know probably before I come back, there will be an election, and I don't know what's going on with you personally, but it's been a pleasure working with you, and I hope you will be here.
Not coming for Silga?
No, I may be wrong. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Blair.
Thanks for coming, Blair.
Yeah.
Our next delegation is Lisa Becker with McElhaney Consulting, and this is to do with the Townley intersection and development cost rate update.
update on both the projects that we're involved in. The first one we'll talk about is county, and then we'll talk about the DCC bylaw update. On Townley, here's the current layout. It'll look very similar to what you've seen in the past. There actually has been a number of tweaks, but they're minor in the scheme of things, but they do mean a lot to the stakeholders. And one of the larger changes that we're looking at right now is adjusting the 4th Street access. So it doesn't work very well to have an in and an out this close to the roundabout. But we understand that 4th Street is a major route for first responders who we met with this morning. And we're collecting feedback from everyone. But at this stage, we're looking at having an out only, and they were amenable to that. So overall, they cleaned up the intersection in a big way. But we're still in the middle of getting feedback. But this would be the biggest change from the last time that we showed you this, would be this 4th Street. All right, so we've had in-person site meetings with the following. We've met with CP Rail over here in this area. Obviously, we're looking for some land acquisition there, so we've met with them. We've been in full contact with them on a regular basis, and actually we're doing site work out there as we speak. So we have met with them. We've met with Jim's Refrigeration here. This will be an impact to, and I say the word impact, but really it's a positive impact to all the landowners. We're talking about moving street away from their house, adding pedestrian and cyclists and accessibility, as well as more landscaping. So it's positive impact. We met with Jim's Refrigeration to talk about his access there for his business, and we worked out a plan with him. We've met with these two folks here. They have garages that are very unsafe right now the way they front Victoria. So we're looking at adjusting those to face the lane. So those would be very positive impacts for them. We've also met with these landowners here as well and talked about closing off that railway access. That's really, even with the current configuration, it's really very not safe. So this will improve that. They were very supportive of that as well. And then we have contacted these folks by letter, and we're looking to meet them in person fairly soon. So overall, stakeholders we've met with in person have been very positive, supportive on the project. And any concerns that they've had, we're addressing as we go with access issues and landscaping and things like that. So we have had a route coordination meeting with the following group here. And we met with these folks. They're not necessarily having input into the geometry, but we are definitely taking their input. We're accepting any input, really, but their input was mainly for the detours. So they'll be impacted while construction is happening. You may have heard some rumor, and I want to make sure I address that today, that the Ministry of Transportation is looking at putting a light at the eastern access of Townley. There's a rumor going around, and I want to make sure we're clear on what that is. The Ministry of Transportation was present at this meeting where we met all these folks together. And Downey Mill, they were great. They had their traffic volumes, their truck volumes, which were almost 300 trips per day. So back and forth. So about 150, but one way. So that's a lot of truck traffic to manage. And what they would like, and what we would like, is to manage that through eastern access. But about 90% of their truck volume goes west. They would be taking a left on the highway, and that's recognized as not a safe left turn at this time. The Ministry of Transportation, we understand that the city would like to look at long-term solutions there, but short-term, the ministry is going to look at adding maybe a slow-down section there, reduce speed, possibly a flashing light, something like that during the construction. They have not made any promises. They have their whole process to go through for that, but we have brought it up. So that's something that we're in talks with right now. So we don't want to have the rumor out there that the Ministry of Transportation is going to put in a permanent light. We want to make sure we'll walk into the process carefully. So for these folks,
Before we get off of this, if you don't mind, I'm going to be meeting with the minister in Victoria next week, and one of the things that we had talked about is, and I'm not sure if you, is having a merge lane going west. Was that being discussed at all? Because I think you're not going to do the light, which I can see the reasoning, but I think that the merge lane is extremely important, especially for the downey trucks.
agreed. Long-term, that intersection, if you could put the mill traffic through that intersection versus downtown, that would be a huge benefit, safety-wise, for sure, for the area. We talked more short-term, trying not to corner them into making any decisions in that meeting, but agree that long-term, that intersection needs to be looked at.
And the merge lane would be the next best option to the light.
That would be a safety improvement. One of the things with the ministry is they have their system that they do with traffic counts. So they look at volume, they call it a warrant system. So what warrants an improvement like a left turn or a light. Because it's not safe right now to make that left turn, hardly any traffic is making that left turn. So during construction, if they go through with a temporary light or a temporary measure that allows that left turn to be safely done, then we would be getting more accurate traffic counts. But that would be great to bring up with them. An improvement, absolutely, for the detour and the long term. So the school district, resort bus, Downey Milne Hospital, we met with them. BC Transit wasn't able to make that meeting, but we'll be contacting them by email. And these groups are understanding of the project, and we'll be working through step by step with them on detours. And that comes about. A lot of that has to do with the contractor. We'll be putting in requirements in the tender that accommodates these folks. And then this morning we met with the fire department, RCMP, BC Ambulance, and also BC Police. And we got their input on that 4th Street permanent connection, trying to make that safer, as well as the temporary detours. And the other concerns in the area with pedestrians and cyclists and just the improvement in safety overall. I want to bring this up again. Last time I went over it, I didn't have as many examples of some qualifications that could be looked at during the tender process. So I wanted to give some examples that could be looked at. If we were to proceed with a tender that was price-based and qualifications-based, these are some examples. These are some of the critical concerns for this project. So one of them would be an experienced public liaison person. That would be really important for all of those stakeholders we just looked at, the route affected and the first responder affected. Also communication plan, past experience. Those are examples of qualifications we could evaluate. Your worship, we brought up this last time, the sufficient staffing to complete the project within time frames is an example of a qualification we could look at. Demonstrated success with traffic management and detours, past performance on projects, and subsequent past performance. Those are examples of criteria that could be used. And these are key project risks. We saw these last time, and I want to show how we've been addressing these over the last month. So for land acquisition, that would be CP Rail. At this point, with our current design and looking at the landowners around it, CP is the only property owner we're looking at acquiring any land on. So early engagement, we've engaged them really back in early 2016. But they are up to speed with what we're proposing right now. So that's how we're managing this risk. For access management, we're managing this risk with, you can see it, on the ground collaboration with the different users and early engagement. So we realized that the detours won't be in place until this fall in a minor way for pipes, and then in a major way next spring. That's a year away. And we want to make sure that we're engaging all of those stakeholders early in the process to manage any of those concerns. And then one of the risks that we identified were just contractor capabilities. So a way to manage that is to look at the qualifications and price-based alternate procurement methods. And then for construction disruption, the way we're managing that right now is looking at how we can phase construction, as well as we would include certain requirements in the tender documents about milestones and deadlines that have to be met. And having a solid communication plan between the contractor and the different stakeholders. So those are the risks that we're managing currently on this project. The last few tours. And the budget, this is the same that you saw last time. It's not an update, but as a review, it's not a $5.1 million roundabout project. We want to make sure that that message is clear. It's a roundabout, intersection improvement, road restorations for streets with aging utility replacements, head and cyclist upgrades, stormwater, sanitary water, street lighting, landscape irrigation, and shallow utilities. So the project as a whole is around $5 million project, and we do want to maximize the grant funding on that. So the whole project is around $5 million. And for the schedule, we're still looking at underground utilities in the fall, and then remaining underground utilities and roadworks, landscaping, starting in spring as early as weather would permit next year. And you may have seen some folks out with vests on today if you drove by the site. And what we're actually finishing up today is underground utility locates. So there's not a lot in the area, but CP Rail has some serious power infrastructure that runs adjacent to their rail lines. So we have going out there today, they've located that and other like TELUS infrastructure and so on. So we're going to know ahead of time where that is. Also surveys out there as well of those utilities and topography. Tomorrow, geotechnical investigation will be out, so you'll see a small drill rig. And upcoming after that will be, once we agree on that exact land acquisition, we'll have a legal survey go out. And then something I want to bring up on the sanitary pipes. We talked before, there's some from 1906 and 1920. A cheaper option than actually digging the ground up, pulling the pipes out, replacing the pipes, and connecting every single service is to line them. That's a cheaper option, and it's less invasive. However, it only works if the pipe meets certain conditions. One of the conditions is that it's not wavy. Then if you line it, you end up with this. So to check that out, to see what is actually feasible on this project, in the next few weeks, we'll be doing line flushing. They'll actually flush the sanitary so that they can get a video of it. And when they see the video, we'll see if it's feasible or not to line. If you see folks up, that's what they're doing. And then last, we'll be actually doing some digging in the utility area of the roundabout, and that's to verify the top and the bottom of the concrete infrastructure that CP has. We'll see a lot of work out there, and that's what we're doing. And last on the list here is a project charter. We are putting one of these together for this project. It is a large project for the city, and it has a lot of stakeholders, a lot of scope involved. And really the purpose of the charter is to get on a piece of paper as a best practice for council and staff to agree on what the project success looks like. So that we can look at that up front and make sure we're going to meet that long term. In the project charter, we'll have the results that are expected, scope, schedule, finances, risks, and communication, so the core of it. So we're working on that. And by the way, when I say we, I hope it's clear that I don't mean McElwain me. I mean always we, city staff, we, always. We're acting as an extension and a team, so I don't mean McElwain we. I mean city staff and ourselves. We are putting together a draft here, and we're looking to have that to council for review as some of those scope items get firmed up as we're doing those investigations out in the field. Okay. And so there, the county update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
What could go wrong with a 112-year-old sewer pipe? What could go wrong? Thanks very much, Lisa. Councillor Nixon, you have a question?
Yeah, just a comment. It's just so nice to have you helping us out with the second roundabout after you successfully helped us out with the first roundabout. And the community's not looking at this roundabout project as new, like they've been through one already. I'm really glad that you're able to help us manage through this big project.
Appreciate that. Team effort.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Mike? Oh, DCC.
DCC's, oh.
DCC bylaw update. So we have started working on this project just recently. Wanted to give you a quick update with where we're at. So the last update was done in 2008, about 10 years ago. A lot of the projects in the DCC bylaw at that time were not completed mostly due to the economic downturn at the time. In that DCC bylaw, there were 3 categories of infrastructure included: roads, water, sanitary. And this DCC bylaw update could include parks and stormwater as well, possibilities. We're interested in very beginning phases. Since 2008, a lot of planning and policy has been in place. Here's just a few of them. You're working right now on your long-term financial plans and draft, sustainability plan, parks, trails, plan, Big Eddy water system, transportation master plan. So a lot of things have happened since 2008, and it makes sense to be able to incorporate those into the new update. And we've seen this before, but just a reminder of the importance of the update. This is in the long-term financial plan draft. So this shows the DCC funds available are fairly low around the world in comparison to other communities. And then also the debt per capita is higher than some other communities. So it shows the importance of getting the bylaw up to date and really selecting DCC that are meaningful and are long-term sustainable. So we're looking at a 5-step process. We're in this area right here, April. So right now we're in the background review stage. We're identifying projects, costs. We're looking at different DCCs in different areas. We're looking at growth and also developing a communication and engagement strategy because communicating with the stakeholders in the DCC update is critical. We all know that. Meaningful engagement. In May, we're looking at doing the first public and stakeholder engagement. So that will look at some type of a general information session to the community that the broader community, and then a targeted stakeholder World Cafe. And the idea of a World Cafe is it has tables set up that have topics. They might be topics such as projects or areas of concern. So we have that in a smaller group setting, and the stakeholders are doing table to table. So that we're looking at in May for that. And stakeholders for this in general are real estate agents, developers, contractors, builders. So they're generally the ones that are involved, but we'll make sure that the broader community also has a chance to see what we're doing. Number 3 there, June, we will take that feedback and create the draft DCC rates. And we will look at some things like municipal assist factor, and we will have a council information session to show where we've gotten to, where the stakeholders, their input, and those draft rates. And then number 4 will be a very intense stakeholder workshop. We want to review the rates and get some very good feedback in July, and we'll review that, we'll refine the rate tables for that. And then number 5, we would have in August, we would have a bylaw drafted, an update drafted, and look at that with council, and then we will see. So this is a very accelerated time frame. It definitely is, but with it scheduled like we have it, we want to make sure we have multiple opportunities for the stakeholders to be involved. This is what we're aiming for.
Just a question on this timing. I know it's important to get it done, but building season is sitting right there in front of us. So will you be able to go out to the builders, like go to them rather than just expect them to come to the rec center?
That's a good question. Because of the amount of information we have, and we'll want a number of folks there that can go on to answer questions. It may end up being something like the rec center, but we will be looking at an afternoon or evening kind of session, and we're going to be scheduling things at 8 a.m. We'll try to be as accommodating as possible, but we'll want their input multiple times.
Questions?
So I went over the stakeholders really, and then the engagement methods that we're looking at. We have a dedicated email set up, which we'll be sending out shortly, so that as folks want to give feedback, we have an email address with all those comments. We'll in person, Facebook, see
Thank you. We're into 9A.
I'll bring that forward, Your Worship, that the fire and security alarm system regulation bylaw number 2087 be read a first, second, and third time.
Motion by Councilor Brothers, seconded by Councilor Stallings. Discussion on the motion.
I was just taken aback and surprised by the number of false alarms that we have every year, so I think this is a good bylaw to have, so that we can get people to make sure they don't have these false alarms.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Motion's carried. And item B.
Bring that forward as well, that municipal park regulations bylaw number 2185 be adopted.
Motion by Councilor Brothers, seconded by Councilor Sauls. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
I'll carry on.
Sure.
That the vehicle for hire bylaw number 2215 be read a third time.
Motion by Councilor Brothers, seconded by Councilor Sauls. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Sauls.
Your Worship, some of the stakeholders with the taxi business brought up a couple things about dealing with shuttles and that sort of thing, and the staff have dealt with that in the report, saying that at some point in the future they may need to look at that, but at this point we're not there. So those things have been addressed going forward.
Thank you. Any other, Councilor Nixon?
I think it's really important we don't lose sight of those shuttle bus drivers, and staff keep track of that and remind the next council to bring that forward in the next year.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. And we're into interim cannabis prohibition. And we have a presentation.
Short one, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if there's even a visual for this.
Got weeded out.
Read it out.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a staff-initiated bylaw amendment in anticipation of legalization of cannabis by the federal government. This proposal provides definitions of cannabis and cannabis-related uses, which ensure consistency with federal terminology, which would be inserted into our zoning bylaw. It will also, for the time being, expressly prohibit cannabis-related uses such as retail sales, dispensaries, and production. This is an interim measure to ensure staff have the time to prepare regulations for these uses. Many other municipalities are starting down their cannabis regulatory road with an interim prohibition. Some examples include the City of Surrey as well as District of Tofino. Some communities are currently focusing staff resources on immediately defining the regulations for their municipality. I think I heard someone from Kelowna on down that road right now. Our department currently does not have the resources to jump into a public engagement process of that nature. We will address in the future, either in-house or contracting out that process. Future regulations developed by staff would include best practices that municipalities are already working on right now. It would also consider things such as community input, specific provincial level regulations, which are yet to be revealed. We would be looking at things around the density of retail sales, how many retail sales locations per block or in the community as a whole, distances between those, distances between other types of uses such as sales of liquor possibly, looking at things such as distance to institutional uses. I know some communities are concerned about the distance near to elementary schools and or high schools. Also could be looking at hours of operation and any other number of elements that the province will allow municipalities to regulate. The province did release a white paper on that, but it is not a regulatory document at this time. If we do not have a general prohibition in place, and we don't have detailed regulations in place at the time that federal legalization occurs, it's most likely that the cannabis-related sales or uses or production would be permitted in any commercial or industrial zone in the city, which is something I think we want to have a little more control over. So the resolution today would give first and second readings to the proposed bylaw to provide for this interim prohibition and direct staff to schedule a public hearing on that matter.
Okay.
I can bring forward the motion, Your Worship, that zoning amendment bylaw number 2224 be read a first and second time, and that a public hearing be scheduled.
Motion by Councillor Duke, seconded by Councillor English. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Brothers.
Mr. Whitehead, I just think this is a really wise proposal for our city. We have some time, not an enormous amount of time, but we do have time to think about this and get this right. So I'm certainly going to support this. I think this is a good idea.
So I guess another way of looking at this is that the reason why we're doing this is that so we have control on where it goes, because once it becomes a legal business and it is owned properly, it could go anywhere and there's no regulation on where it goes and the number that could come in.
That's the anticipated outcome. Without having seen what actual provincial regulations will come out, this is just a preparatory step.
Right.
The province may come down and say, we're going to regulate it the same way we regulate liquor stores. And so then you would go through similar to a liquor approval process on a case-by-case basis. But we don't know what's going to come out yet. So best recommendations from most planning law firms is to go down this route or develop regulatory programs in advance. But also, if you develop those in advance, you need to be prepared to tweak them if the rules change between now and legalization.
From whatever the province or the feds come down with.
Yes.
Correct. Very good. Councillor Schultz.
Your Worship, just noticing in the province of Alberta, some of the organized liquor outlets are already doing some renovations to their stores in preparation for this. So we need to be cognizant of the fact that this is big business. This isn't Joe, your neighborhood friend, selling a doobie in a storefront. And I know that the city of Calgary last week had just passed a bylaw prohibiting consumption in any of their public areas. So thanks for putting this together.
Did you have experience in the other part you were just talking about?
No comment.
You seem to be very knowledgeable about neighborhood. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any comments or questions on the motion? Councillor Orlando.
Your Worship, yeah, just a couple questions. Several years ago, municipalities across Canada were required under federal law to accommodate for medical marijuana growing. And I believe that's on our books right now. Is this well separated out between what is permitted right now? Because Because part of the wording in the bylaw talked about recreational use, and at other times it didn't.
Through your worship, our zoning bylaw as it's written today does not envision the federally, what's been mandated by the courts under constitutional access to marijuana. It doesn't envision that. Essentially, that's happening right now in the community because it would be unlawful to enforce our bylaw against such a thing, as that's already been established by the courts. So this proposal would not change that. And in anticipation of full legalization coming down the road, I didn't see it as worthwhile to start sticking in a bunch of things about medical cannabis when we don't even really know what medical cannabis is going to be once full legalization happens. So there's no change to the status quo.
Mr. Chabot.
Your worship, just on the point of consumption, I want to remind council that the amendment to the clean air bylaw that council just adopted actually regulates the smoking of cannabis as well.
Yeah, that includes that.
Councilor Orlando.
Yes, and I guess the second question is, like, you know, I understand the gist of this. If you don't do anything, it's going to be a free-for-all, and then you're going to be in a mess where, you know, potentially legal mess and trying to sort that out. Or if you jump the gun and start a consultation now, the community could say something, and then the federal and provincial government comes forward and says, well, that's not, so you're going to have to redo your process again. I anticipate what will happen, though, once legalization happens and the federal and provincial governments are clear about what the playing field is, then there will be an expectation that we go through that process and get it sorted out for our rules. So my question is, is there any estimate on how long that will take once clarity is achieved, and whether council needs to prepare resources such as staff time or consulting to engage in that process?
Through your worship, so that would be yes. The answer is yes. We need to be prepared to resource for that. Time frame would be, you know, I would put it somewhere in the realm of a moderate bylaw amendment. It's definitely going to be a hot topic with the community, I believe. There's going to be some very thorough individuals because, as somebody mentioned around the table, this is going to be big business. And whoever's first in the gate may benefit the most from that. So we'll also have to be looking at a process that is fair to fairly evaluate various proposals and who gets those business licenses. So all of that will take some time. Right now, as the way the department's working, I'm envisioning this being contracted out, but I can't be too sure about that at this point.
But what we're doing today is we're doing first and second reading, and then we're going to have a scheduled public hearing, but I'm assuming the public hearing is going to be scheduled after this framework comes down for us to be looking at what is being proposed from the feds and the province.
Your worship, no, that would be public hearing to implement the prohibition temporarily.
Oh, I see.
So we'll be moving with that quickly to get ahead of federal legalization and then be undertaking a larger process down the road.
All right. So this can happen a lot quicker. Okay. Councilor Orlando.
Not so much a question, but just reconfirming, I think my and probably everyone's understanding at the table here through staff is that, you know, once this question becomes a public question, once the federal and provincial governments have things sorted out, this will be a community process. People will have the opportunity to come out and give their input, their feedback, no matter what that is. We will have a public engagement process where we can talk about it.
Yes.
Yes.
So motion is on the floor for the zoning, first and second reading of zoning amendment bylaw 2224 and schedule a public hearing. Any other comments on the motion? Questions? All those in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll bring forward part 2, that zoning amendment applications for the purpose of permitting cannabis-related uses not be accepted until such time that a complete regulatory program is developed and approved by council.
Motion by Councilor Duke, seconded by Councilor Nixon. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Sauls.
Your Worship, I appreciate this as well. I just heard this morning of a couple of people in another community that had a medical license to grow at home and their house burnt down. So we need to be cognizant of that fact as we go forward, that this is going to may put a stress on other resources in the community.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. We are in item B, which is development variance permit for 1121 First Street West. And you have a presentation, Mr. Whitehead?
That's your worship. I saw it was small this time. On a full page. Thank you, Your Worship. This is a development variance permit application located at 1121 First Street West. This is the corner of First and Wales. There's a diagram of the proposal. The proposal is to provide a permitted exterior renovation on an existing single-family dwelling and add the addition of a small two-bedroom second dwelling unit of approximately 866 square feet at the rear. It's in 2 stories. There's actually a mostly below-grade basement with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom in it. This would be what it will look like from the front, I believe. There's a current street view somewhere in here. There's from the side. There's from the front right now of what it currently looks like. We can go to a site plan here. Sorry, the computer's going really slow right now. The proposal is to reduce the rear yard setback from 7.5 to 6 meters back here. To reduce the parking from 4 stalls to 3, which would be across the width of the lane, not the entire width of the property. And to increase the minimum driveway width off the lane from 6 meters to 7.8 meters. The parking variance really is a bit of a technicality. If this were considered a secondary suite rather than a second dwelling unit, only 3 parking stalls would be required. However, the zoning bylaw states the way that we word secondary suites is that it must be contained within a building. And this, if you look at the side, is more appended to the side of a building. More of a traditional duplex format, although it's not split 50-50. So due to that definition, this would be considered a second dwelling unit, although it's within the size of what would be permitted as a secondary suite. So we anticipate the demands for this as being 1 stall, plus 2 for the principal dwelling. The driveway width variance is supported to allow for parking of all the vehicles, or all the stalls off the lane. There were some other proposals by the applicant adding driveways to First Street West, adding a tandem stall or a tandem parking driveway off of Wales, which were not as preferential to as off the lane. So that is the proposal. The approval of resolution today will accept the application and direct staff to notify neighboring landowners and residents within 100 meters of council's consideration of issuance.
Councilor Duke.
I'll bring this motion forward. The development variance permit application number DVP 2017-14 from the Monashee Draft and Design be approved, and council give notice of their intention to consider issuance of development variance permit number DVP 2017-14 for 1121 First Street West to vary the following bylaws as seen in the package.
We're going to do these all in the same one? Is that what your motion is?
Yeah, it's all one motion.
Okay. Seconded by Councilor Nixon. Discussion on the motion? Councilor Brothers?
Just a question for Mr. Whitehead. I noticed on the side that it looks like it's grass covered now where the parking is going to go. What do we do with that? Do we require them to pave it, or I mean, how does that work?
Drainage would be addressed as part of the building permit stage. Looking at it just from the street view, it looks like it may slope that way. It may have to be graded back towards the lane. Engineering may require some infiltration, storm collection drains, like a gravel rock pit, that sort of thing, to deal with infiltration. it's purely gravel, that may not be necessary. It depends on what the applicant would propose to do.
But there's not a requirement to pave it.
No, there is a requirement to pave if you are in excess of 4 stalls, I believe, or 4 or 5 or above, not in this case.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Mr. Whitehead. Moving to correspondence, we have a letter from Mr. Benwell regarding parking enforcement. Councillor Nixon.
Just your worship, if we can refer this to staff for follow-up and to reassure Mr. Benwell that this council is not advocating our responsibility to the safety of our local citizens. It was just a very unusual winter.
Do we need a motion to refer to staff?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay, so that's a motion by Councillor Nixon and a second by Councillor Orlando. Refer to staff. Any more discussion on the motion? In favor? Motion's carried. Does anybody want to bring anything up about the RCMP Community Policing Report of February? The Parks, Rec, and Culture Monthly Reports for March. Bylaw Compliance Monthly Report for March.
Your worship, just back to the aquatic center, the month of March has gone up 3,000 people in 3 years for the month of March, over the last 3 years. That's a lot of tourists.
Nice. Any other comments on the Park and Rec Culture Monthly Report or the Bylaw Compliance Monthly Report? Questions from media? John?
Sorry, thank you, Mayor McKee. Was there a rough schedule as to when the public hearing might be for the cannabis?
Mr. Whitehead?
Through your worship, so for the public hearing for the interim prohibition would be as soon as corporate administration is able to do their notification period. Usually that's 2 weeks to 4 weeks.
Yeah, looking at the schedule, it's likely to be May the 10th.
Right, so.
Just safe to say May?
Yeah, we've got 2 meetings in May. It would be one of those 2 meetings. As far as a more fulsome public engagement process for what the regulatory regime would look like, that would be later on this summer or fall.
Yeah, this is just for the interim.
Yes.
Any other questions, Sean?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Jake? Looking for a motion to go in camera pursuant to section 9.1A, C, and K, Community Charger. Councillor English, Councillor Orlando, all those in favor, motion's carried.